The view from the Aurora Sky Lounge was breathtaking, a golden web of New York City lights glittering below, mirrored in the tall glass walls surrounding the rooftop restaurant. Inside, the sound of soft jazz drifted through the air, mingling with the gentle clinking of crystal glasses and hushed conversations of the elite. The evening was perfect, at least on the surface. At a corner table by the window sat Alexander Kruger, a man whose reputation preceded him. Billionaire, investor, powerhouse. Those were the titles the media gave him. But among his peers, he was something else, untouchable. Sharp as glass, cold as winter steel, and just as hard to reach. He was tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit that fit like armor. His blue eyes, the color of frozen lakes, scanned his surroundings with detached precision. Nothing escaped him, not the flicker of a candle, not the nervous waiter refilling his glass, not even the subtle whispers about him from the next table. This wasn't leisure, it was business. He was meeting representatives of Goldmont Technologies, a company desperate for his investment. The deal was worth billions, but Alexander had already made up his mind. The dinner was just a formality, his way of asserting control before signing on his terms. As the others chatted idly about stocks and mergers, Alexander tuned them out. His thoughts drifted far from Wall Street, back to a place he rarely allowed himself to remember. Germany, the cobblestone streets of Berlin. The sound of his mother's laughter echoing through their small flat. The smell of cinnamon and freshly baked bread. He pushed the memory away like he always did. That was a lifetime ago. A waitress approached the table, pen and notepad in hand. She couldn't have been more than 25, slender, with dark brown hair neatly tied back and eyes that seemed to carry quiet strength. Her name tag read Lena. She smiled politely. "Good evening, gentlemen. May I take your order?" Alexander didn't look up. He was used to giving commands, not making conversation. When he finally spoke, it wasn't in English. In his deep, measured voice, he ordered, in perfect German. "Ein Steak, medium rare. Kein Salz. Und bringen Sie mir einen deutschen Rotwein, wenn Sie überhaupt wissen, was das ist." A steak, medium rare. No salt. And bring me a German red wine, if you even know what that is. The table fell silent. His associates glanced at each other, puzzled by the sudden switch in language. But Alexander didn't care. He assumed the waitress wouldn't understand him. Hardly anyone did, not in New York. Except this time, someone did. Lena blinked, her smile faltering for a split second. Then, to everyone's surprise, she replied, in flawless German. "Natürlich, Herr Kruger, ich weiß genau, was Sie meinen. Und, ich habe etwas für Sie." Of course, Mr. Kruger, I know exactly what you mean. And, I have something for you. Alexander's head snapped up. His icy composure wavered. Her pronunciation was perfect. No accent, no hesitation. And when she said Herr Kruger, it struck him like thunder, formal, respectful, familiar. He stared at her, frowning. "Sie sprechen Deutsch. You speak German." Lena smiled gently. "Fließend. Es war meine Muttersprache." Fluently. It was my mother tongue. Something about the way she said it, calm, almost nostalgic, made his chest tighten unexpectedly. Before he could respond, she reached into her apron pocket, slipped a small folded note beneath his napkin, and said softly, "IHRS and word gleichkommen, Herr Kruger. Your meal will be right out, Mr. Kruger." Then she turned and walked away. Alexander sat there frozen, her words echoing in his head. He hadn't heard anyone speak to him like that in years. He glanced down at the folded paper beneath his hand. It was an ordinary piece of stationery, but when he unfolded it, his breath caught. The handwriting was elegant, almost old-fashioned, looping letters written with a steady, practiced hand. The scent of lavender clung faintly to it. The note said only one line. "Greater than, your mother said you'd never forget this language." She was right. The world tilted. His heart skipped a beat. For a moment, he could hear her again, his mother's soft voice, her gentle scolding as she made him repeat his German lessons. "Alexander, sprach ist Erinnerung. Wenn du sie vergisst du dich selbst. Language is memory. If you forget it, you forget yourself." He gripped the note tighter, the letters blurring before his eyes. How could a random waitress possibly know something so personal? He had left Germany 15 years ago, right after his mother's death. Since then, he had buried everything, the language, the home, the grief, under layers of wealth and success. No one in New York even knew he was German anymore. Alexander, one of his business partners, asked cautiously, "Is everything all right?" He forced himself to blink. "Fine, just fine." But his tone was strained, his posture rigid. As the conversation around the table resumed, his mind was far from the restaurant. Who was this Lena? How did she know about his mother? And why did she look so strangely familiar? Unable to resist, he turned to glance at the bar, but she wasn't there. He scanned the floor. No sign of her. Finally, he motioned for the manager. "Excuse me," he said curtly. "The waitress who took my order. Lena, where is she?" The manager blinked. "Sir, I'm sorry, there's no Lena on tonight's schedule." Alexander's jaw tightened. "She served me 10 minutes ago." Brown hair, German accent. The manager frowned. "Sir, we haven't had a German waitress in months. The last Lena we had left 2 months ago. She moved back to Berlin." A chill crawled up his spine. "That's impossible," he muttered. "She was just here." The manager looked genuinely confused. "Would you like me to check the cameras, sir?" Alexander didn't answer. He just sat back slowly, his eyes falling again to the note resting in his hand. The handwriting, the scent of lavender, the way the K curved, it was identical to the letters his mother used to leave him on the kitchen table before she went to work. The resemblance was too exact, too real, but that couldn't be possible. His mother had been dead for over a decade. The music in the restaurant faded into a distant hum as he sat there, staring at the note. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but from recognition. It felt like the past had found a way to reach out from across time, gently reminding him that no amount of money or distance could erase where he came from. When the waiter finally brought his steak and wine, Alexander barely touched it. He left a thick envelope of cash on the table, excused himself from the meeting, and walked out into the cold Manhattan night. He unfolded the note once more under the streetlight, staring at the words that had shaken him to his core. Greater than, your mother said you'd never forget this language. She was right, and for the first time in years, Alexander Kruger, the man who built an empire from stone, felt like a lost boy again, standing in his mother's kitchen, hearing her voice whisper in his mind. Greater than, remember where you come from, mein Sohn. But he didn't yet know, that note was only the beginning. Someone knew his secret, and before long, that someone would lead him back to everything he thought he'd buried forever. The night air was sharp and cold, slicing through the city's noise as Alexander Kruger stepped out of the Aurora Sky Lounge. He loosened his tie, his thoughts in chaos. The note felt heavy in his pocket, heavier than all the billions in his bank account. Your mother said you'd never forget this language. She was right. He couldn't stop replaying those words. The handwriting, the lavender scent, too personal to be a coincidence. But it wasn't just the note. It was her voice, the way she spoke his mother tongue, as though she had known him for years. He spent the night pacing through his penthouse. The lights of Manhattan blinked below, but all he could see was that waitress's face, Lena. Who was she? Why had she known so much about his past? By dawn, he made up his mind. He needed answers, and he knew exactly where to start. Mantelpiece clock, a call to Berlin. At 6 a.m. New York time, Alexander picked up his phone and dialed an old number from memory, the private line of Dr. Elias Hoffman, his mother's former attorney in Germany. Elias, it's Alexander. The older man's tired voice crackled through the line. Alexander, it's been years. What's happened? I need to know if my mother left behind anything, letters, documents, anything I wasn't told about. There was a pause, the sound of paper shuffling. Then Elias said, your mother left one sealed envelope in my care. She instructed that it should be opened only when you remembered who you are. I never quite knew what she meant. Alexander's grip on the phone tightened. Where is it? That's the strange part, Elias said slowly. It was claimed 2 months ago. Claimed? By who? By someone named Lena Richter, Elias replied. She said she was family. She had identification, even your mother's old signet ring. I verified her documents. She seemed legitimate. Alexander went still. Richter. Yes, Elias said softly. Your mother's maiden name. The room spun. He could barely breathe. So the mysterious waitress shared his mother's surname, and had claimed his mother's last letter. Elias, he said quietly, I need that address. The one she gave you. There was hesitation on the other end. Alexander, if this is truly what you want, you may not like what you find. But Alexander was already packing his suitcase. Airplane back to the past. 2 days later, the billionaire stood in the small, medieval German town of Rothenburg ob der Tauber. The streets were cobblestone, the air filled with the scent of bread and pine. It was the same town where he'd spent his childhood, and the same one he'd run away from at 19. He walked slowly toward a small brick house at the edge of town, its roof moss-covered, its windows shuttered. The memories came in waves. His mother standing at the doorway, wiping flour off her hands, waving goodbye as he left for university in America. He had never returned after her funeral. Now, as he turned the rusty doorknob, the door creaked open to reveal a home trapped in time. Dust hung in the air like ghostly snow. His mother's piano still sat by the window, its keys yellowed with age. A single envelope rested on top. He approached it slowly. His name was written on the front in his mother's familiar looping handwriting. Beneath it, a faint lavender scent lingered, the same as the note from the restaurant. Hands trembling, he opened it. Greater than, mein Sohn, if you are reading this, it means you have remembered the language of your heart. You have found her, and yourself. There is something I never told you. When you left for America, I adopted a little girl from the orphanage. She was only 9. Her name is Lena. I raised her as my own, your sister. Be kind to her, Alexander. She carries pieces of me that you left behind. The paper slipped from his hand. His sister. Lena wasn't just some stranger. She was his mother's last secret, his sister, raised after he had gone. The realization hit him with the force of a storm. The resemblance, the German accent, the faint familiarity in her eyes, it all made sense now. She hadn't approached him by accident. She'd been waiting for him to remember. He turned sharply as a faint sound echoed from behind, the soft creak of the door. Cloud with rain. The reunion. Standing there, framed by the gray German light, was Lena. Gone was the waitress uniform. She wore a pale coat, her hair loose, eyes glistening with tears. She looked at him, not with fear, but with something deeper. I hoped you'd come, she said quietly, in English this time. Alexander's heart pounded. You knew who I was. Yes, she whispered. Mom told me about you. About the son who built an empire but forgot his roots. I wanted to meet you for years. When I found out you were in New York, I applied for that job, just to get close enough to see you once. He shook his head in disbelief. You pretended to be a waitress just to hand me a note. Tears filled her eyes. It was the only way you'd listen. You don't check your mail. You don't answer unknown calls. I knew you'd ignore me if I came as myself. But if I spoke to you in the language you forgot, I knew you'd stop. Alexander's throat tightened. You wrote that note. I copied Mom's words, she said softly. The last thing she said before she died was, he'll never forget his language, or his heart. He stared at her, every wall he had built crumbling. For years, he had lived like a machine. Numbers, meetings, flights, but now, standing before the sister he never knew, something inside him cracked open. Slowly, he stepped forward. I thought I lost her forever, he said hoarsely. And now I find she left me, you. Lena's tears spilled freely. She always believed you'd come back one day. She even kept your room ready, as if you might walk through that door any moment. Alexander let out a shaky breath and reached for her. For the first time in 15 years, he embraced someone not as a businessman, not as a billionaire, but as a son, as a brother. They stood there for a long moment, surrounded by the silent house that had once been their mother's world. Dove a new beginning. Later, they sat by the piano, the last rays of sunlight painting the room gold. Lena pressed a key gently, the same lullaby their mother used to hum. Alexander smiled faintly. I'd forgotten how beautiful that sounded. She never stopped playing, Lena whispered. Even when she was sick. She said the music kept you close. He glanced at her, emotion softening the cold edges of his face. I spent so long running from my past, and now I realize it was the only thing that could save me. Lena reached into her coat pocket and handed him something small, a folded piece of paper. Mom left this for you too. She said it was the final note. He unfolded it slowly. Greater than, family is not who you share your blood with, but who helps you remember where you came from. The lavender scent rose again. He smiled through a tear that surprised him. He looked at Lena. I think it's time I came home, for good. Outside, the church bells chimed softly across Rothenburg, their echoes mingling with the gentle melody of the piano. For the first time in years, Alexander felt something he hadn't felt since his mother's death: peace. The billionaire who had once believed he owned the world finally realized that what he had truly lost was never a fortune, it was family. And as Lena began to play, Alexander joined her, their music filling the house like a promise, one written long ago, sealed in love, and delivered by fate.